Kelley Ford with TheLines.com. Kelley, I know you guys you do a lot with football, but I see some basketball, do a little bit of everything at the Lines.
Yeah, over at TheLines.com, got you everything covered from your sports wagering perspective, whatever sport you're interested in, all sorts of content and information over there. You can check it out at TheLines.com.
Kelley, when you look at the conference averages, I like what you've done here. Conference average, K-Ford rating, points per game, above or below Division I average. Big 12, comes in at 12.2. The Big 10 right behind them at 10.4, moving up the SEC 10.3. Big East and then the ACC. And, of course, we know this when you get into college basketball, you get into, as much as what you've got 33 different conferences here. It really is interesting that I think we forget how many people play Division I basketball that could get into the tournament. But let me ask you about the SEC. How deep is this league? We have those conversations down here of, is this a 7-team league to the tournament? Is it an 8-team league, 9-league team? How deep is this league in your estimation?
Yeah, the SEC is obviously the kings of the gridiron, but very good in men's basketball as well. I think you can go 7, 8, 9 deep into the tournament this year. Of course, the bubble starts getting murky. You get your bid stealers. But in terms of the best teams in the SEC, for me, it kind of starts with a top tier of grouping. Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, all very similarly power rated, up there in the top 5, the top 10 in the country. So to me, that's kind of the class of the SEC, if you will. Kentucky is probably in that next kind of tier, that next grouping of teams. Texas A&M, Florida, Mississippi State, right there in your backyard, Jake. Those are also some teams that, from a power rating standpoint, are performing at a very, very high level, a top 40 level nationally. You talk about next year, what the SEC is going to look like. Both Texas and Oklahoma right now in the top 35 of my power ratings on the basketball side. So I think you can get all the way down into the middle, maybe even that third quartile of the conference, where you've got resumes that put you in a position to be under consideration on Selection Sunday, because that's what the committee's looking at. And as someone who works in a conference office and oversees basketball in the Horizon League, I can speak pretty detailed on what the committee's valuing and what they don't value. When you play in a conference like the SEC or like the Big 12, where night in and night out, these games that you're playing, they're quad 1, they're quad 2 opportunities. You get rewarded by the committee for winning those games. You do not get punished for losing those games. So even if a team has collected some losses and that loss column's really piling up, if all of those losses are in quad 1 and quad 2, in the eyes of the selection committee, you actually still have a pretty good resume, and that's how you can see, 8, 9 teams from a single conference get into the tournament.
Which conference, in your estimation, are we sleeping on this year that could be, somewhat of a surprise? I mean, obviously we know about the Big 12, the 10, the SEC, the Big East, the ACC. I mean, are we looking at the, Mountain Valley Conference? Are we looking at the West Coast Conference? Are we looking at maybe a WAC? I mean, where are you looking that maybe a lot of people aren't looking?
Yeah, I think, outside the Power 6, if you will, in college basketball, that'd be your traditional Power 5 plus the Big East. For me, it's easy to go right to the Mountain West. I think the Mountain West, they might get 4 teams in the tournament this year, and for a high they're mid-major, high major, whatever you want to call them. They do play FBS football, of course, in the Mountain West, but typically not a basketball powerhouse that comes to mind, the Mountain West Conference. I also think the A10 is a conference to keep an eye on with some good teams. The WCC, the West Coast Conference, usually they've got Gonzaga, and then, St. Mary's will be a strong team too. In recent years, San Francisco has made the tournament out of the WCC. Gonzaga is down this year. This is not the Gonzaga-type team that you're used to seeing from the last 25 years. So I'm not sure how much the WCC is going to be a big player come March this year, but definitely the Mountain West, the A10, that's where you need to be looking if you're looking outside the traditional Power 6.
Let me shift back to college football real quickly and get your thoughts on a couple. Well, I talked to Chris Landry about this yesterday. Way too early, but you look at the Miami Hurricanes and what they have been able to do in the transfer portal. You start really chalking through their recruiting and what they obviously bringing in Cam Ward, and it looks like this could be a bang or bust year for Mario Cristobal. And talent wise, it looks like they've got as good a talent as anybody in the ACC coming back. Is this a bang or bust year in your estimation for Mario Cristobal?
Yeah, I hate to put that kind of label on it when we're this far out, as you said, but I think that's reasonable. And, Jake, as we've talked about before, in the new look ACC, I mean, Florida State, a recent, the last half century has risen to power, had some really, really good teams in the 80s and 90s. Of course, won a national championship in 2013 with Jameis Winston, got maybe snubbed this year. Florida State's a team that you look at in the ACC and say they could be a flag bearer. Clemson, with what they've accomplished under Dabo Swinney the last 10, 15 years, they could be a flag bearer. Outside of those two programs in the ACC, now we're talking football, not basketball. I mean, where else are you going if you're not going Miami as kind of that team that really should be at the top of the conference standings every single year? Mario Cristobal is a Miami guy. He's an alum, right? He knows how to recruit. We saw that at Oregon. We're seeing that at Miami. The biggest thing for me is, can Mario Cristobal improve really his game management skills, his time management, the way that he calls a game, the way that he affects the game from the sideline. If he can piece that together, you said it. They're putting pieces together in the transfer portal. They've got a really strong roster. There really is not an excuse for Miami, and I'll say this regardless of who the coach is, there's not an excuse now for Miami to not be in the top 2 or 3 on a year-in and year-out basis in the ACC. And that should have been the expectation there since they joined the conference in 2005, I believe it was. Of course, they have not been a perennial power in that conference. There's really no excuse. And as the landscape continues to shift in college football with conference realignment, Miami needs to make sure that they're playing at a peak level here when the next wave inevitably hits.
Kelley Ford, make sure to find him on X. You can go to KFord Ratings, also kfordratings.com. Check him out at the Lions. Kelley, always appreciate your time. Have a great week. Look, when we talk next week, it'll be a lot about the Super Bowl, and we'll tee that up as well as other things as well.
Looking forward to it, Jake. Appreciate you as always.